Hey guys, today we're in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 28. We start off the first couple of verses, really kind of go to chapter 27. Basically, as David has been hiding with the Philistines and going in and lying to the king that he's raiding Israel, even though he's raiding the enemies of Israel, the king says, okay, now it's time to take over Israel. And so he calls David and he says, you know you're going to go out with me, right? Basically, he's saying, hey, you say you've been attacking Israel, now let's see it in battle with me. And David doesn't break the lie. He simply says, well, you know what I can do. You know what I've been doing for you, so I will waylay Israel. And so we get to verse 3 and it says Samuel has died. Now we've seen this a couple of chapters ago, but it's important because it's showing you the spiritual void of Israel. Samuel was the one who was kind of connecting God to Saul and to Israel, but he is gone. So it's almost kind of back in the time of the judges again, right? Where everybody they had no spiritual leader. And so that's why it's in there again. But we see that Samuel has died, but Saul the king, he actually does something good. He kicks out all of the necromancers and all of the mediums out of Israel. This is what God has told them to do before they came into the promised land, but Saul finally does it. And the Philistines encamped at Shunem, which is in the valley of Jezreel, which means they're really, really close. I mean, they're dead center of Israel. They have really kind of impeded on Israel while they are mourning Samuel and while King Saul is being silly. The Philistines have really came close to where the palace is of Israel. And so we can see here Saul was scared when he saw the Philistines because they're already in Israel. He's scared of what they're going to do. And notice this, it says that his heart trembled greatly and Saul inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him. He did not answer him by dreams or by the Urim and the Thummim, right? The high priest, but there is no high priest at this moment, or by the prophets. So he's trying to see what the Lord wants him to do, but the Lord is not answering him. It's a reminder to us that the Lord does not always answer what we want. He is not our spiritual genie. But also when he doesn't answer, it's a great place for us to see, is there something impeding that conversation? And if Saul would have done that, he would have known absolutely, there's an issue between him and God, but he did not do that. And so basically he couldn't get any spiritual advice, so he tells his men to, hey, find me a medium, a necromancer, somebody to talk to dead spirits. I need to talk to somebody who's dead. And they're like, hey, you kicked everybody out, but we know of one. We know of one in Endor. Now, in my translation, it's called the medium of Endor. Yours might be called the witch of Endor, or even the necromancer. And that's probably a better word, a necromancer, somebody who deals with the dead spirits. Doesn't really matter what we call it in the English, but it's somebody who deals with spirits. So not a godly person. And so they come to this woman and she says, hey, I'm not really this person, because, the king has kicked them all out. She's afraid this is kind of like an undercover sting, right? Trying to get her. And Saul says, I promise it's not. There will be no harm that comes to you. I want you to bring up somebody. And she said, okay, who do you want me to bring up? And he said, I want you to bring up Samuel for me. And it's interesting because Samuel, right, he's the one that told King Saul, hey, he's done with you. He's removed his spirit. He's given it to David. David will be the new king. And they didn't end on the best terms, but Saul wanted the good old days. He wanted to go back to the very beginning where it was him and it was Samuel at the very beginning. Everything was good because Saul was good. He cared what God wanted and wanted to do those types of things, right? So he asked for Samuel. And notice what happens, verse 12. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. You don't get this by reading, but why would a necromancer cry out with a loud voice? She didn't know Samuel. She didn't really care about Samuel. It's because she's actually seeing somebody who's dead. She's actually seeing a spirit. Most of the time, right, these people are tricksters. They're magicians, right? And so here is a woman who's made her life on tricking people. She's speaking to dead people, but now in reality, she sees a dead person. She's just as scared, right? So she's seeing a dead person. And so she cried out with the long voice, and Saul said to her, "Do not be afraid. What do you see?" And the woman said, "I see a God coming out of the earth." That word God, or maybe your translation say spirit, but in the Hebrew word, it's Elohim. It's literally the term for God. And I see God coming up. What is his appearance? He's an old man coming up. He's wrapped in a robe, and instantly Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down. So this isn't a crystal ball experience. This isn't a vision that this witch is having. This is something physical. This is a true vision that not only the witch, but also Saul can see, right? So he bows down because he knows it is Samuel. And Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me?" Think about this, right? Samuel has gone from the earth, right? And he's in somewhere good. Now, we can argue about what is good. Remember, Jesus hasn't come yet. So he could be in Abraham's bosom. He could be in a place before heaven, because it's not until Jesus comes, right, that people get to go into heaven, that sins are truly atoned for. So wherever it is, it's a good place, right? And Samuel's saying, why did you take me from somewhere good and bring me back to earth? Why have you disturbed me? And Saul said, "I am in great distress." Notice this. Saul's all about himself again. "The Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answered me no more." Little note here. God never turns away from a person. It's always the person who turns away from God. Okay? God never turns away from a person. It's the person who turns away from God first, right? And so he's saying, God has turned away from me. No, it's Saul who has turned away from the Lord. And because Saul has turned his back on the Lord is not answering. The Lord is not hearing. There is sin. There's a problem in between the line, right? Communication is being broke down. And so God is not answering Saul because Saul has turned away from him. And he said, what should I do? What's going on? Why is all this happening? And Samuel says, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord, and you did not carry out his fierce wrath against the Machilites, right? So he's basically saying, because you do not love the Lord, you do not follow his word. Exactly what God has been saying from the very beginning of time. Moreover, the Lord will give Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines. He says, hey, the Philistines are going to take over Israel. They're going to wipe you guys out. And he says, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Tomorrow you will die. Tomorrow you will be executed along with your sons. The Lord will give the army to Israel into the hand of Philistines. And Saul fell down, just totally understanding if you knew where you're going to die tomorrow, there would be a lot of emotions, right? He falls down. And what's interesting is he falls down, he faints, probably because he's weak, he hasn't eaten. And what's interesting is the witch is the one who comforts Saul, right? So Saul, the king of Israel, is comforted by the witch. She prepares him a meal, and she feeds him and his servants basically their last meal, and just sums up kind of the ending of where Saul is at. It's not the godly who is comforting him, but it is the ungodly that is comforting him. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 29. God bless.